Day is always held on August 31st. It's the night before the dawn, as we say. It is the night of remembrance before Recovery Month starts tomorrow. As we are here this evening, there are over 30 other events similar to this that are happening across the state of North Carolina. Across the world, I can't imagine how many numbers of events that are going on, but they're going on in every continent that we have. And we choose this night, even though it's a holiday weekend, to show unity and solidarity for those who have had similar journeys to ours, having lost friends and family and loved ones and colleagues to the battle of overdose. And so we thank you for being here this evening. Overdose is the leading cause of death for people in the United States under 50 years old. And this represents the highest rate of drug-related mortality in the world. So when we say that we are the greatest nation, and we say that we are a first world country, we still have a long way to go in taking care of our citizens that need us the most. Overdose deaths are preventable. There's not a need to have another overdose death. But today we celebrate the lives and the resilience of people who got another day when their overdoses were reversed by naloxone and other prevention programs. We'll talk more about naloxone in a little bit. But we know that the Surgeon General has said that every citizen should have access to naloxone, and every citizen should carry it, and every citizen should know how to use it. But what the government hasn't said is that we're going to fund you to be able to have that. So we're here tonight not to make a political statement, but to make a plea on behalf of those who need it the most. That we need to have funding access for naloxone, and we need to make sure our citizens are aware of how to use it, and they feel empowered to do so. We also need to make sure that there's funding for prevention efforts. And I'm not talking prevention for adults. I'm talking about prevention education for children starting in elementary school. Because we know that a lot of times the trauma that turns people to using substances to self-medicate, that trauma begins at a very young age. So if we can educate teachers and professionals and our children on how to be self-aware, practice self-care and community care, we can help reduce the number of overdose deaths. Again, I want to thank you for being here tonight. You'll have an opportunity in a little bit to participate in our Tree of Hope. We'll play a song. We'll ask that you, as you feel led, come up. We're all given a card. If not, we have cards and pens here on the table to write a positive affirmation, a word of hope, a word of encouragement. And then the cards that are left here tonight will be collected by the Gaston County Overdose Response Team. And we will, in turn, give those to individuals who are referred to us after they have experienced an overdose. Right now, I'm going to invite the Reverend Dr. David Julin to come up, and he's going to give us some words about grief.
Thank you, Michelle. My name is David Julin, and I'm the pastor at First Baptist Cramerton. I'm involved with a group called Faith Fighting Addiction. It's a network of churches that started this year. And what our aim and our goal is to motivate and educate the churches of Gaston County. We have about 600 to 800 churches in Gaston County. It's kind of a floating number. But what we've found is that many of them are not as active in this fight against addiction as we really hope they could be. And we hope that in some way encouraging them and giving them information and really saying that I think that in the basic DNA of the church is the mission to help those who are in need. And, you know, we have so many people who think in 2017, Michelle. And by the way, Michelle and Chastity, they work with Olive Branch and do a wonderful ministry. And I'm just proud to be with them tonight. And they really are out on the front lines. And I'm just really glad to be able to work with them. And I've got to know them, and they do a wonderful ministry. I believe, Michelle, if I'm right, in 2017, over 70,000 people in the United States died from overdose. Over 72,000 people. To give you a little perspective on that, 58,000 people died in the Vietnam War. And, we look at the piece up here, and this, just since January to July, this is how many how many times Narlexicon and Narcan have been administered here in Gaston County. So there's a lot of people. We don't have as many people here tonight because it's Labor Day and it's kind of inconvenient, but that's kind of how life is, isn't it? Drugs and trauma and tragedy enter into our life. And I imagine you're here because in some aspect you've been touched by tragedy or trauma. John Stanley, who's the minister of visitation and pastoral care at First Pres, was going to be here tonight, and I'm sorry he's not because he does a wonderful job. But I remember talking to him a few years ago, and John, his daughter, Susan, was killed in a car accident coming home one night about 30 years ago. He said about a week later, he was at the corner of Garrison and New Hope, and he was going to work a week or two later, and he said he looked around and there was a guy that was talking on a mic about work, and there were a couple of teenage girls in front of him and some woman over to the side of him, and life was just going on with them. And he said, I wanted to get out of the car and say, hey, how can life go on? Don't you realize my daughter has died? I wanted to get out, he said, and just tell everybody, how can you keep going and doing all these things when my wife and I, our entire life has been turned upside down? You might have felt something like that when you've been touched by tragedy of any sort. I think the biblical writers understood that too. In the book of Isaiah, there's a passage where Isaiah says, but those who hope on the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. And Old Testament scholars look at that and they say, one of the things that they've noticed about that is it seems to be inverted, different from what the poems normally are. Because it starts out with soaring like eagles, running like young men, and then walking and not fainting. And so, why would that be? John Claypool, who wrote a book about grief, said he didn't know for sure, but here's what he said he thought they were trying to convey. They were trying to convey that sometimes God is closest to us, not when we are trying to soar like eagles, when we're trying to do mighty spiritual things and run and build, or even when we're trying to run and be active in our work. But he said for him, the toughest days after his daughter died were those days he just had to get up and put one foot in front of the other and walk and not faint. That was the pinnacle of where God was there to help him. So what I want you to know tonight is that whatever your faith is, whatever your thoughts or beliefs are, we really believe that God has compassion and God is reaching out to help you in some way. I guess I've done about 200 funerals in my career as it is. I mean, one thing I almost always say at a funeral is, grief is a sign where love has been. If you're here tonight and you're grieving, that's a heavy burden to bear. I'm not trying to diminish that. But the reason you're grieving is because you love somebody. You see, you can't have it both ways. You can't go through life and say, I am never going to grieve and I'm going to love. Because when you love somebody, you open yourself up to grief and being vulnerable. Now, there's an alternative. You can never love anybody. You can sort of lock your heart up in a box and close it up and never allow it to love. But I think really in the end, that's a far worse fate than the grief you may be experiencing tonight. So I would like to give you a word of encouragement, a word of help, and also just basically a word of presence that I believe that God is with you, and I believe that there will be a better day. But maybe tonight is just the night you're walking and not fainting, and that's okay. Okay? That's okay. So I'm glad you're here, and I also know that my brother died after struggles and things like that, and I remember my mother said, it seems like that the events of his death have just overshadowed his entire life. And what I would like to do is have people to remember him. So that's one of the things we're going to do here tonight. You get a chance to remember these folks, and you get a chance to remember them for the joy that you had with them, and for how you get a chance to remember them. And so what I'd like to do is just have a word of prayer and then turn it back over. All right. God, we thank you for all that you've done for us. But Lord, we pray that tonight that those who are hurting, that you would come and speak to them. You would comfort those frayed and jagged edges. You would help them and help them to be reminded that they've not been left alone. We pray that you would just watch over us all now and help us where we have need in your heavenly name. Amen.
Hi guys. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chastity, and I am in long-term abstinent-based recovery. And I tell you that because while overdose is real and addiction is real, recovery is real. I am a survivor of overdose. I have experienced overdose before in my life. And I've also had a brother who overdosed and died. So this day hits personal. It hits home with me. And tonight I'm going to share with you some poetry. I'm going to share two pieces. One piece is written by somebody that I know. His name is Kevin, and when I invited him to this event, he wrote this poem as a response. Unfortunately, he could not be here tonight. So I get the honor to stand in his place and share the poetry that he written. And then after that, I'm going to share a piece of poetry that I wrote back in April when I was grieving my brother one night. It's titled Escape. As a child, I wanted to escape the hurt and pain. As a child, I wanted to be happy and normal, but I only knew what I saw, even though I didn't always like what I saw. As time went by, the more I had to escape. Escape the pain of being the last one standing when everyone else is gone. Escape the pain from everyone that I love leaves me in one way or another. But as I got older, the escape grew as I did. My escape ended up turning into something more. My escape ended up turning into my end. My escape ended up turning into a punishment for the ones around me. And looking back, it was a punishment for the loved ones that are no longer here. I tried to do something else besides my escape to not feel the pain and be normal. I lost myself to my escape. I used to ask myself, why am I still here? When we've lost so many, mother and father, sons and daughter, loved ones, and even friends, some say I'm strong or I'm a fighter, but I say we are strong and we are all fighters. But let's not forget the ones that we lost to their escape, whatever that might have been. And that was written by Kevin. You know, today is about coming together and celebrating the ones who are in recovery, encouraging the ones who are struggling, and remembering those that we have lost to overdose, the ones that we have lost to their escape. So that poem is very fitting for today. The second piece I will share with you is one out of my own journal. My brother's name was Brian Guy Farmer, and he was born July 5th, 1990, and he died at the age of 26 in 2016. I thought about you tonight, how heroin took you from our side, how on December 16th, 2016, you overdosed and died. I thought about the countless others, and I thought about all the crying mothers. I thought about Christian, who also lost her brother. And I thought about how I don't want there to be another. You had eyes as blue as the sky, just like mine. You loved to skateboard. You loved to draw. You loved to rap. In an instant, in a moment, you were gone, just like that. And by the grace of God, I will never go back. That poem is for him and for all the other ones that we've lost to overdose. Again, we gave y'all the cards, the purple index cards, to write a positive affirmation and encouraging words so that we can give those out to people who may still be struggling. And we're going to come forward as Michelle plays this song and clip them on the tree, the paper clip. If you just break it and then put it through the hole, and you can come up here and hang it on a branch as we honor somebody, someone tonight.
Just what you need. I'm just another cold shoulder. You're somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's mother, somebody's someone, somebody's missing you. Wherever you came from, wherever you go, I hope you know you're somebody's someone. You're somebody's someone.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know if it's over yet. I don't think so. Yeah, I got. I'm lazy, man. I figured out a way around it. That's what we always say. Work smart, not hard.
Well, it's on you, 'cause you know there ain't nothing we can do, no matter how hard we're trying. Can't make you drink that water.
Yeah, I'm the cameraman. See how hard I'm working?
Somebody's son, somebody's mother,
Yeah. It doesn't zoom, so this is not even good.
somebody's missing you. Wherever you came from,
I did for hers,
wherever you go,
for just her performance. I'm waiting on it to load so I can send it to her. It's like 5 minutes long, so it's going to take a year.
you're somebody's son. And
There's somebody's someone. You may be somebody's someone. I want you to take a look at the map that's down here. That was referenced a little bit earlier. Before you leave, come up and actually take a look at the map. This map was generated by EMS, Gaston County Gyms. It shows the number of overdose reversals that took place in the field just by EMS within the last calendar year. It shows the number of additional naloxone kits that they gave out to people who are at high risk of overdose. And we get a copy of this map every month on the overdose response team. So we know where to go in the communities in Gaston County to train folks on how to use Narcan, to offer it to individuals at high risk. But when we normally get the map, there's a little dot on there. And so my conversation with EMS was, we don't reverse dots, and dots don't die. These are somebody's someone. These are people. These are our loved ones. So we asked them if they would replace the dots with faces. So I hope you'll take a look at this and see the faces of those who were given a second and third and fourth and I don't know how many chances because they were reversed with naloxone or Narcan by EMS. And we are so thankful for their partnership with the overdose response team in that capacity. Thank you for the affirmations that you put on the tree. We'll leave it up here if you think of other things that you might like to share, words of encouragement for those that are at high risk of overdose and those who have experienced an overdose. Then we'll be happy to take those cards and we're going to give them to the individuals when we meet with them, to let them know there are people in this community who care, who are rooting for them, who came out tonight for overdose awareness. Now we're going to have a naming ceremony, and this is something that we do as harm reductionists, people who try our best to reduce the harm in the lives of people who use drugs. We do this when we gather to remember and honor those who have passed. So I'm going to read this ceremony, and then we will give you an opportunity to lift up the names of individuals who you may know. You can do it loudly, you can do it quietly, you can do it in your spirit, however you feel need to do so. We'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. My love, my sibling, my parent, my friend, family. You are family to me. Your perfection is not required. It never was. Not to love you and not to grieve you. You are and have always been worthy. We know the truth of you, your love, your contradictions, your challenge. We know your laughter and hurt and hope. We carry you with us even now. So on this day, we call you by your name. It is beloved. Today we allow ourselves to love you fully. Today we allow ourselves to grieve you honestly. We miss you. And we know that your life was a life worth saving. No matter your choices or your struggles, we miss you. Because grief is born of knowing. May your memory be a flame for the way forward, compelling us to act as agents of resurrection, proclaiming loudly that every life is worth saving and all loss is worthy of our grief. Now, following a moment of silence, please join me in keeping alive the spirit of the beloved we have lost to overdose, calling them each by name. Troy.
Chip Green.
Danielle.
Ashley.
Dan.
Patrick.
Amber.
Becky.
Austin.
Tiffany. Twitch. We love you and we call you beloved. We are witnesses to your life and acknowledge that it was divine. Your name, your memory, they are our way forward. A way that ignites again and again your living and our love for you in all the holy names. Amen. And now we're going to have a demonstration of how to use the intermuscular naloxone. If you want to come forward so you can see more closely, then, or you can stay where you are, either way. It will be brief, and then after that we're going to have a blessing of the naloxone. So these kits are what we give out to individuals that we are referred to us through either syringe exchange or through the overdose response team. The overdose response team was formed in partnership with Claremont Hospital, Partners Behavioral Health, the Gaston County Controlled Substances Coalition, and Olive Branch Ministry. I don't think I said earlier, but I'm the executive director and co-founder of Olive Branch, and Chastity and I do the overdose response team for the county. In this kit, there are 2 vials of naloxone. That is the medication that reverses an opiate overdose. It is not addictive. It does nothing simply but tell your brain to breathe. You cannot abuse this medication. If you administer the medication and they have not taken opioids, there's no opioids in their system, this will do nothing to them. It cannot hurt them. In the kit is also 2 intermuscular needles. These needles help you apply the medication in a large muscular area, preferably the arm or the thigh. It can also go into the buttocks. And there are instructions on the kit with pictures step by step on how to administer the medication. If you encounter someone who you believe has overdosed on opioids, the first thing you want to do is try to wake them up. You can do that by shaking them, calling their name if you know that. If they're non-responsive, you can administer pain stimulus, either by rubbing on their chest or putting a knuckle underneath their nose and rubbing in their mustache area. I prefer that because it's the most painful. If they do not respond, either you or you have someone else call 911. You You tell the operator that you have naloxone, you believe someone is overdosed, and you're going to administer the medication. Then you want to do a series of about 5 to 6 rescue breaths. That's simply where you pinch their nose and you breathe mouth to mouth. Do not do chest compressions. You may not be able to detect a heartbeat, but if there is one going on, we don't want to interrupt that flow. So give 5 to 6 rescue breaths. Then you want to take the medication. You want to pop the lid, which is orange if you can see it. Draw slowly 1 vial into 1 syringe. Then you take this, you don't have to find a vein, you just jab it in their arm or their leg, and you administer the medication with a plunger. Then you wait 1 to 3 minutes. If the individual does not begin to stir, does not begin breathing on their own, then you can give the second dose. Hopefully by then, your rescue personnel will be on the way. There is no civil or criminal liability for you administering this medication, even if the person passes, because of the 911 Good Samaritan law. You act in good faith in administering the medication, and you are covered under that immunity. We also want to make sure that if you are a person who uses drugs or you're on the scene, that you give your name to the operator. Because if you give your name and you are a person that is using drugs, or you're on the scene and there are drugs, then you are given civil and criminal liability, immunity for the small amount of drugs or drug paraphernalia that is on the scene. Okay? After you give the first dose, if the individual begins to stir, you want to make sure the area around them is clear. If they do not stir and you give the second dose, you want to continue doing rescue breaths until they begin to stir or until 911 arrives on the scene. Again, it's so important to call 911. The 911 Good Samaritan law does protect you. We do ask that if you use one of our kits, there is a phone number on here that you can call or text the phone number to let us know one of the kits have been used, or you can call the overdose response team directly. We need this information because we report this information to the state, not who you are, but where the overdose took place. And it helps us then have funding to be able to buy additional kits to give them out for free. We do give these kits out for free to individuals who are at high risk of an overdose. So if this is something that you would like, we do have some kits here available this evening, and we're happy to give them to you as an individual. Since the naloxone program started in 2013, there have been over 100,000 kits that have been distributed to lay people by the North Carolina Harm Reduction Coalition, which we do partner with. And there have been over 15,000 reversals since 2013 that have been reported by lay people. We're not talking first responders, EMS agencies. 85% of that 15,000 is estimated are reversals that have been done by people who use drugs on people who use drugs. Drug using community cares about their community, and they don't want anybody to die, and that's why we put this medication out there. So if you have any questions about this, if you want to see a demonstration again, feel free to come see me after this is over with. If you know someone who could use this and they're not here tonight, we have cards available. You can refer them to us. Our office is located at Phoenix Counseling, and we are happy to meet with them and get them the supplies that they need. Now this is a time where you can participate. We do have naloxone down here, just a small bit, but I'm going to claim this blessing for all the naloxone that we have in our office that we give out. So if you will, in your program is the blessing for naloxone. If you will read on the parts that say all. The blessing of the naloxone. New life is before us. I invite you to extend your hands towards these kits as we offer the blessing. Creator of resurrection and light, we come to you with grateful hearts for all the ways your love continues to rise up in our midst. We give you thanks and praise for the holy drug naloxone. the new life that it can bring. We know that we need each other to survive, so we ask that you bless these kits and all those who will use them and all those who will be in need of them. Make them and us instruments of resurrection, that suffering will be released and that injury will be transformed, that joy will arise, that strength will take hold, and that hope will take wing, and that death will yield to new life. Empower us to live into our vocations as people of resurrection, bringers of new life, proclaimers in word and deed of a new day rising. In the name of all that unfurls hope in our midst every moment, we pray. Amen. Now, David, if you will come and close us out.
Thank you, Michelle. That's an opportunity to learn. You don't get the opportunity every day to learn something or get access to something that may help save somebody's life. As part of this, I've learned some new words and being around folks. And one of the things I learned is a saying, harm averted, benefit unseen. Sort of like when you tell your kids don't cross the road, maybe in front of cars and look both ways. That's hopefully they're not going to get run over. They're not going to be in the way. And you don't see obviously what you prevented. It's a benefit unseen. So a whole lot of what we're doing in the community is sort of like that, harm averted, benefit unseen. So remember, you can be a part of this, I call it a campaign to fight addiction and all sorts of addiction. And just remember that this is an opportunity to really help change and save people's lives. After I finish, we should have a brief prayer. And if you've got an opportunity to introduce yourself to somebody else out here, why don't you do that? And if you'd like to share your story or why you're here, that may be very meaningful to somebody who's here tonight. So why don't we just say the Our Father together, if you'd like to do that with me. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you for being here tonight, and God bless you. And again, thank you, Michelle and Chad. What a great job y'all do.
That's the same one as videotape I saw that one. I don't think it has a zoom, so it's just been at this the entire time. Dang, that's a buff dude. Huh? I guess so. Some fancy blood on it. I didn't even look at it. They do other things, but yeah, they do that too. Well, I mean, like non-narcotics. But yeah, they do have a lot of people. That's go there.
They don't anymore. I've been there 3 times in the past year, and I promise you,
Yeah, they didn't do it when I got clean 7 years ago. They stopped it.
Experience over knowledge.
Yeah. I went through that place 12 times.
seriously?
Yeah. 12 times. Every time I go in there for H&I always tell them.
Oh, you went 12 times when you got drunk?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was stubborn.
I went 3 times this year.
Oh, really? Yeah, you're stubborn too.
Yeah, like 3 times since August of last year, and I started in August of last year.
Takes what it takes.
Last time I was there, they let me come in and send me to the hospital.
Yeah, they stopped letting. I would have done. Probably would have topped the 20 mark had they actually, you know.
Well, no, they sent me to the hospital because I was doing coke and drinking, and my blood alcohol level was 0.34 when I was in there.
Good, right
They sent me. That was at like I didn't drink nothing for like 5 or 6 hours. Still blew 0.34. And that was at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They sent me to the hospital. I left the hospital at like 1:30 in the morning. Went back to the detox center and I still blew 0.12.
Yeah, son.
Crazy.
What was you drinking?
Half gallon of vodka straight out the bottle.